Please take your seats. We're going to start. Please take your seats. We're going to start. Thank you. Hello, hello. Come on, right here. Yeah. Okay, please take your seats and we'll get started. Don't get too close to the microphone. It's kind of loud. Okay, so welcome to the, what is this, 28th anniversary year of La Raza Roundtable or something like that. I am not Bob Nunez, and that's a good thing. Bob is a much sharper dresser than I am. I am dressed like Steve Preminger tonight, so we're matching. So, yeah, Bob is a good dresser for sure. I don't know where he gets his shoes, but it's a lot. But I am Chris Ariola, and I am with tonight with La Raza Lawyers Association. I'm a board member, of course, of La Raza Roundtable, and my day job is at the District Attorney's Office. So Bob called me. He did have a family event tonight down south, and so asked me if I would fill in. And I said, of course, and with great luck, of course, we have our guest speaker, Molly O'Neill, who is the public defender of Santa Clara County, and her assistant, Damon Silver, who's here tonight. And of course, our chief of police, yes, Paul Joseph. And I got his card so I wouldn't forget. I'm gonna find it somewhere, and it's gone. Okay, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. Oh, look at that, see? Molly is always prepared. Eddie Aubrey, our independent police auditor for the city of San Jose. Thank you for saving me, Molly. Very good. So thank you guys for all sitting up here. We're going to have a little prayer in just a moment, then we'll do introductions and hear from any of our people at the table here. And of course, Molly will be giving us a presentation on what's going on at her office tonight, and then we'll take questions. If you do have announcements, we traditionally wait to the end. I understand there's some people who can't wait to the end, and you need to do your announcements during the introductions. Of course, we will survive. But right now, I would like Gabrielle to come up and give the invocation tonight.
Thank you, everyone, and for the 1 minute notification. I'm Gabrielle Antolovich, and I'm with the Billy DeFrank LGBTQ plus Community Center, and Jose, who's here, is also on our board. I just want to say that amid all of the negativity toward our LGBTQ community, I want to say that La Raza Roundtable has always been welcoming. I came here many a time long before I was with the Billy DeFrank Center, and I'm one of those obviously gay people, and nobody went, ew, we can't have her here. Victor, hello Victor, you were welcoming, and Bob Nunez, who's not here, he has been amazingly, he's not only an ally, but also an accomplice, somebody that stands up for you. And I just want to say that all of you have always been so welcoming, and the invocation really is a big thank you to our allies. We cannot do this alone. And I know La Raza Roundtable says the same thing. We cannot be an isolated little island fighting our own fight. We have to connect with everyone who's fighting the same fight, even though we are different people. But the issues are the same. In fact, it's the same people that hate all of us. You know, they hate black and brown people, they can't stand the LGBTQ plus community, and they hate immigrants. And you know, I'm a first generation immigrant from Yugoslavia. after the Second World War. I'm actually 74, so I'm really old. And English actually is my third language, and I was born in Australia 5 months after they arrived, and the government, the American and Australian government, wanted immigrants to rebuild the country. Does that sound familiar? And they had all these posters promising wonderful things, but the people hated us. And so, as a tiny child, I was defending my parents against white Australian men who were spitting at my parents, telling them to speak English and to go back home, where, if you know anything about Yugoslavia, that doesn't even exist anymore. My poor father had no home. And so, I know what it feels like to defend other people. And I am so appreciative that you are with us and are our allies and accomplices, and all of the people up here are the same way. They're in a position to do a lot and have done a lot. And I am wanting to say thank you.
All right, she says amen. All right. There we go. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do our introductions. Please stand up if that's good for you, and say your name, and if you're with a particular group tonight, that would be great. Oh, here, sorry. Oh. That one stays there.
Good evening. My name is Raul Colunga. I'm one of the original founders of La Raza Roundtable, along with Herman, Rose, and Victor, and retired county bureaucrat, 34 and a half years with the Social Services Agency.
Thank you. Good evening. As you mentioned, Herman Vasquez, one of the founders of La Raza Roundtable.
I'm Vice Chair Richard Santos of Santa Clara Valley Water District, along with my comrade Tony Estamera. And Victor, if you're looking in, God bless you. Hope you get well.
My name is Caroline Mireles Saylor, Program Manager of the Day Worker Center here at Conexión, also recruiter for the Bright Futures program here at Conexión as well. And Victor, have a wonderful evening.
My name is Rose Amador, and I'm the CEO here at Conexión to Community, also with Native Voice TV, and one of the founders with these young guys over there. Hi, Victor.
I'm John Liss. I'm one of the volunteers for the mentors recruited by Caroline.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle, and and at City Council this coming Tuesday at 1:30, I'm doing the invocation, but I'm going to get a little bit longer to do it.
My name is Jose Guerrero. As Gabrielle said, I'm a board member with the Village of Frank LGBTQ+ Community Center.
Hello, my name is Sabina, and I'm a student at YB. Hello, I'm Alexa from YB at the Bright Futures program.
Hey.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adriana Vasquez. I'm a youth life skills coach for the Bright Futures team at Conexión.
Hello, I'm Ulysses Garcia, and I do the same thing with the kids with Conexión as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Domingo Jimenez. I'm a cultural broker here at Conexión.
Thank you. You don't have to clap for all the adults.
Lori Ramos Chavez, Vice President here at Conexión Community.
I'm Steve Preminger. I'm with the counties. I'm the Director of Civic and Community Engagement, and I'm here to support Molly O'Neill.
My name is Sam Ho with the San Jose Evergreen Community College District.
Good evening. My name is James Rigo. I'm co-founder of the Frankie Santos Foundation.
Sky Santos, I'm just a guest.
Elizabeth Stewart, Prevention Bureau at the Department of Family and Children's Services, Kingdom Family Resources.
Derek Grasty, Board President, Mount Pleasant School District, also Board of Directors, Hunter Black Men in Silicon Valley.
Hi, my name is Ernesto Barajas. I'm from Carcel Neighborhood Association. Thank you.
Danny Garza, Blatter Oil Troublemaker. Victor, I want to thank you for allowing me to, all these years, to speak and represent the community.
Catherine McBain from the Office of the Independent Police Auditor.
I'm Rodolfo Leon. I'm a volunteer for Bright Futures.
Good evening, Craig Pasqua, and for Victor, I was thinking about you this week, the tornadoes they had down in Texas. I hope your family's okay, and I'm the executive board member here, La Raza.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Keith Morales. I'm formerly with First Five, as some of you know me. Now I'm with Go Kids. I'm the Director of Community and Parent Engagement.
Okay, is that everybody? Oh, there we go.
I'm Enrique Flores, a community member and a proud member of the Raza Roundtable for a few decades.
Eugene Bradley. I'm Eugene Bradley, VTA, independent advocate. Thank you. Gracias, Victor. Please get well soon. La Raza Roundtable was one of the first groups that took us in years ago when people were afraid of me, people like me who helped hold VTA accountable. So, gracias, La Raza Roundtable. Gracias, Victor.
Did we have a short announcement from Enrique?
Bob had asked me if I could share a few words, and I wanted to reintroduce James and Sky. They're here as guests. Whenever families call me as a Mayday, they don't know what to do, they don't know who to turn to. First stop is always La Raza Roundtable, and that's why they're here. They felt lost having their young person in juvenile hall for the first time, and just, everyone freaking out, the whole family, and just trying to reassure them that Santa Clara County is a progressive county, and it's all about, rehabilitating a young person whose brain is still developing. So just wanted to welcome Sky and James here to this community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if we also wanted to allow our host for the last, almost 30 years, Conexión, of Rose Amador. Did you want to have a few words? No? Oh, okay. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your time. So as I introduce myself as a Bright Futures recruiter, so those of you that sat on your chairs, and if you're still sitting on it, I put these, I put one of these on your chair. So when you get up, the ink isn't dry yet, so you might have some on your chair. Just kidding. But anyway, so we do have 2 mentors or 3 mentors here, and you could also be another 4th mentor, okay? So our kids are, they're amazing. They're all different. They all come from different walks of life, and they need some encouragement. And so from middle school all the way to high school, some are graduated already this year, and we do fun things, and we go camping, and just get to know them, and they get to know us, a little bit. And we don't share personal things or things like that. We just want to know how their day's going, because mom and dad are working both in the day and the evening. So sometimes they just have to go home after school and fix their siblings a dinner or something. So they just need another adult to talk to. So the Conexión contact number is here on the card. So please feel free to call and leave a message, ask questions, and we are going to start our training in August. So then as soon as school starts, we just open those doors and we're ready to go. Okay? And feel free. And then when you call, I'll also have my cell phone number on there as well, so you can also call me on my cell phone. And then I have this one here, the Day Worker Center, that I'm also a program manager of. So the Day Worker Center is also an amazing program that we have skilled workers that can come out to your home, and plumbing, electrical, landscaping, caregiving, you name it, we have the person that will work for you. And I tell everybody that rather than, and I'm not trying to insult anybody here as far as a plumber or electrician, but rather than have someone come out and give you an estimate of $75, we're, you know, less than $25 an hour to have your things replaced or fixed. Okay, so please give us a call. We have a lot of people that are skilled that are working with us. Yeah, that's all that I'm trying to sell our people to. Oh, and also, so we have a guest speaker as well, okay? We have Oliver that's gonna come up today. Yeah. And Oliver is one of our Bright Future students that's been with us for at least, I wanna say, is it 3 years, Oliver? 2.5, okay. 2.5 years. Thank you, Oliver.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Oliver Engano, and I've been with the Bright Futures program for 2.5 years, and they helped me with a lot during school and out of school, mostly with my homework. I had to focus at the end of the year for that, but they helped me a lot, and at home too, with the stuff I'm going through, and they really supported me, and I want to say thank you for that. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And as we all know, mentor programs really do work. And so if you can sign up yourself or connect someone to be a mentor, you can get a lot out of that too. So thank you, Conexión. And that sounds really great. Okay, so no more announcements. We're going to have our guest speaker. I'm going to introduce her because I have had the great privilege to work with her the last, I don't know, 27, 8 years, something like that. And we were in juvenile court together when it was a lot different place. And I have to give credit to all the partners in juvenile court from when I think I started there almost 14 years ago. It was about over 300 kids a day were in the juvenile hall, and now it's well under 100, which was not something that just happened. It took a lot of work from the court, probation, the DA, and also the public defender's office, really pushing us to make sure we weren't just falling back on old habits and really looking at new trends and better ways to do things. So I think that's been something that Molly's brought to the office from that juvenile experience, is to look for ways that the public defender can be different. Molly did graduate. She's locally educated anyway, but she attended UC Santa Cruz, where she was a banana slug, and then University of San Francisco Law School, and has worked at the public defender's office for most of that time. And I think most impressively, as she says it, she has worked to make the public defender's office a holistic office, not just somebody who comes in and helps you with your case, but somebody who helps you with your life. And they've added social workers, they've added immigration lawyers to deal with immigration issues as they come up, and even community outreach public defenders who go out and work with the homeless, with youth, and other community concerns that might not ever get to court, but really could use the help of a lawyer. And I think that's pretty awesome. So we're very lucky to have Molly here as our public defender. She's hired a lot of people locally from the community, bilingual staff, bicultural staff, and really made a difference and made a modern public defender's office that we all hope to have. So I give you Molly O'Neill.
Thank you so much for that kind and overly generous introduction, Chris. And Victor, to you, I wish you were here. Last time I was here was 2019, right before COVID hit, and you always give the best hugs. So speedy recovery to you, and we miss you here tonight. And lastly, thanks to Gabrielle, who I know from work in juvenile court, for making me laugh with her prayer, non-prayer invocation. It's quite nice. So my hope tonight is to talk to you a little bit about my office. I am the public defender for the County of Santa Clara. I was appointed by the board as interim in 2012 and made permanent in 2013. But I have been in the office since 1990, so Chris was right. We've been at it together for a long time. So I want to talk about how public defense offices came to be. I want to talk some about ours and how we've changed and evolved over the last 20 years, 15 years, and why it matters and why you're even having me here tonight to talk about it. And after I am done, and I have a lot of materials, but it's Friday night, I get it. I'm gonna try to move through it and happy to take questions. But after I am done, Assistant Public Defender Damon Silver, who's dressed in the nice suit next to the Chief of Police, is gonna talk to you about our race equity work, both in our office and within the county. And I apologize that I am not in as nice a suit as Damon is. I came from a graduation, and it's a hot Friday afternoon, so I figured you all would forgive me, and many of you have seen me in a suit before. So, haha, that sounded different from what I meant. So, public defense and public defenders' offices all grew out of this, the ideas of this visionary woman, Clara Fultz, who became the first woman lawyer in California. She was denied admission to the only law school in the state at the time, Hastings, and she sued them, and so then they let her in. After she graduated from, yeah, that's right, and after she graduated from law school, they wouldn't let her into the state bar to practice, which she had just spent years learning to do. So she helped rewrite legislation to change the language from white males can practice law in California to people can practice law in California. And she was then admitted to the bar and allowed to practice. And she was a big proponent of fairness and balance in the system. And somehow she worked many different legal jobs while raising 5 children over the course of her career, but including as a prosecutor. And as part of that, she envisioned that there ought to be governmental sponsored legal counsel for people who couldn't afford it, who were being prosecuted. And to that end, she gave a speech at the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893. And she loved her speech, but almost no one did anything with it. So, except when Clara, went to Los Angeles, where they founded the first public defender's office in 1914. It was the first one in California, and it was the only one for many, many years. The rest of the state didn't follow suit in establishing public defender's offices until the landmark case of Gideon versus Wainwright. Before I talk about Gideon, this is the Clara Fultz courthouse in LA. She was such an influential figure, they named an entire humongous courthouse after her. So this is Clarence Gideon. He was a drifter in Florida, and he was accused of stealing money from a pool hall, and not much money. He was arrested, prosecuted, and convicted, all without a lawyer. So he was then sentenced to 5 years in the state penitentiary in Florida, during which time he petitioned to the Florida State Court to send it back and let him have a lawyer. He had no legal training, he had no education hardly at all. It wasn't much money. And the Florida Supreme Court said, nope, no luck. So then he petitioned to the US Supreme Court. This is his handwritten letter asking them to reconsider the fairness of him being tried and convicted and sentenced with no lawyer. And here he got some relief. They agreed. They sent his case back. It was retried with counsel this time, and he was acquitted. And because of the language in the US Supreme Court case, public defender services became mandated, and after that, they sprung up all over California. They were, and all over the country, really. So our public defender office in 1965 was founded. Here's the first 11 people in the office, and now there are 34 counties in California with formal public defender offices, which cover about 93% of the population. Those other very, very small counties use contract services, and they clearly cannot provide the kind of level of service that foundational public defense offices can. Here's where we are today. We are roughly 303 employees with a decline projected for next year because the county is cutting our budget some, but we are big compared to 1965, and we have roughly an $83 million budget going into next year. So when our office was founded in 1965, and when all those other offices were founded in the wake of Gideon, here's what we did. We appeared with our clients at their first court date, which is the arraignment. We advised them about what evidence we thought the prosecution had and possible outcomes. We advised them whether they should take the case to trial or resolve it through a plea bargain, and they would do one of those things, and then we would either take the acquittal, take the dismissal, or appear at sentencing, and that would be it for us. Here's what public defense offices traditionally had in the way of staff: lawyers, clerical staff, and investigators, and that's it. And that was the case for 50 years. In 2013, our office received a Department of Justice grant from the Bronx Defenders to provide us technical assistance to start to do holistic defense. So holistic defense sounds a little weird, but basically it's an idea that, and Chris alluded to it during his introduction, it treats the whole person. So rather than you stole a pack of meat from Safeway, you know, they got you on camera, that's it. It's like, why were you stealing the meat from Safeway? What drove you into the system? What are your other needs and issues? And what can we do to both understand those needs and help you get the services you need to address them so that you can then get completely out of the system. And when we're able to do that, and it's a really good model, recidivism is reduced, money is saved, and families are reunited. People are off the streets. People are not drug addicted anymore. So we flew out to New York. Damon and I went together. They came out to us. They talked to us about what all we needed to do to kind of change our model of representation. And there was some resistance to it in the office initially, but it has spread all over California and the country, and it really is the right way to do the work that we do for the community and for our clients. So now that we, 11 years later, here's who we have on our staff. We now have social workers. We got one from the board several years back. We now have 6. We have interns. We have a big army of free labor, and it's good for them. They come in and they're super excited to be doing some legal work, and they watch body-worn camera footage, of which there is a lot, as the chief knows, and it's really important to make sure that you watch it so you know what's happened on the case. We have a mental health team because, as you all know, so many people in our jails are mentally ill, and so many people on our streets are mentally ill, and they require a different kind of attention in the intersectionality of their criminal case and their mental illness. And recently, and Damon oversees this team, we have community outreach attorneys. Chris was the supervisor for the community prosecution team, and for a long time there was no counterpart to them. And in the last 4 years, we've been able to add 3 of those attorneys, and they are out in homeless encampments with their computers, figuring out if people have court dates that they need to attend, recalling old bench warrants, like basically trying to make sure they don't go to jail through our work, meeting them where they live and where they are. We're also in the schools, predominantly on the east side, doing Know Your Rights trainings. We're called in sometimes to kind of de-escalate what might turn into a fight. We're trying to be where we're needed in the community and not just sitting in our office waiting for the business to come to us. So we're, and I would be remiss not to mention the immigration attorneys. So it's huge that we have 2 on-staff immigration attorneys. And back to the holistic model, one of the pillars of it is that you have to meet people's needs seamlessly in-house. So if we tell a client, call ILRC in San Francisco, and that lawyer knows nothing about their criminal case, we're never going to be able to give them the right kind of help to make sure there's an immigration safe plea, that they get the advisement that they need. So we have two excellent, amazing immigration attorneys who all day long do Padilla consults to make Padilla versus Kentucky as a case that gives the right to clients to be advised accurately and well on the status of their immigration status in relation to their criminal case. So we're super proud of all of those things and the way that the office has grown. So in that same vein, and for equity reasons, excuse me, we're no longer just appearing at the first court date and stopping our representation at sentencing. We have a very innovative program called PAR, which is Pre-Arraignment Representation and Review, where we now see clients between the time they're arrested and the time they first go to court. We've never done that. No public defender office has ever done that until San Francisco started about 8 years ago. Santa Cruz is now doing it, but many, many jurisdictions, including LA and San Diego, have come to us to ask how they can follow that program. We're very proud of that. Our community outreach attorneys, as I mentioned, that is new and very innovative, our immigration attorneys. And then post-conviction, which, like I said, we used to stop handling clients and cases and anything once sentencing happened, but there's been a cascade of criminal justice reforms in the last, really starting with realignment in 2011. So we do expungements, we do record clearances, which is hugely beneficial for people to get back in the workforce and sometime into housing. Those criminal records can really impact a person's ability to move forward. And I've listed several other types of post-conviction work we do. Most importantly, maybe now, is retroactive Racial Justice Act work. We have roughly 3,000 clients in state prison from Santa Clara County, and they all deserve to have their cases reviewed to see whether Ashkalra's Racial Justice Act may apply to them in their cases. So that's kind of the way that we have expanded. I'm going to skip that slide because I talked some about that. So, okay, that's great, Molly, but why should we care about this and why does this matter? Well, because we play a critical role in preventing unnecessary and very, very expensive jail stays, incarceration. We work, and Gabrielle and I were together a long time and Chris too, on a prevention and programs work group to try to keep kids out of the school to prison pipeline, so we can we keep people out of the system altogether. We balance out the sometimes crushing weight of the authority and power that the prosecution has to make sure it's fair and it's balanced. And we call out race. I mean, nobody wants to have race called out, but we do that. We say this matters in this particular case, and here's why. And we build community trust, in part by being out with our community outreach attorneys in the schools, in the homeless encampments, and here tonight, I hope. And as far as the clients, here's what we do for the clients. We lend some dignity to them at a time that they are in huge crisis and maybe in jail. We explain the process to them. It's very, very confusing, especially when you're in crisis, to understand what's happening to you. We give clients their day in court, which they are constitutionally entitled to in the way that they want to see that played out. We investigate their cases, we develop mitigation, we interview witnesses, we tell their stories, we get their school records, we humanize the clients, and we explain, as I said, the evidence that the prosecution has against them and what that means in their case. And I just want to touch briefly on this slide, which shows you how much California spends on prosecution every year and how much it spends on public defense. It's 50% to the public defenders for every dollar that the prosecution gets, and that really matters. And certainly there are some areas where prosecution does some things that the public defenders don't do. nonetheless, double the amount of money is too much, and it's not fair. So I just want to talk about a case that we handled that really kind of emphasizes and illustrates the importance of having a public defender. This man, unfortunately, was killed at his home in Monte Sereno and during a home invasion, and our client, Lucas Anderson, spelled L-U-K-I-S, his DNA was found under the fingernails of the decedent. And guess what? Anytime there's DNA in a case, you tell your client, you're almost certainly going to get convicted. That is the power of DNA evidence. And so our lawyer went to visit Mr. Anderson in jail, and he was a chronic alcoholic with a pretty bad story. He hung out at the 7-Eleven on 10th Street down the way pretty regularly and was routinely taken to the hospital for being 3 or 4 times the legal limit for driving. So very bad alcoholic. So he said, I don't know. And one time he had hit his head when he was drunk, and so his memory wasn't very good. So he said, I don't know. His lawyer's name was Kelly Kulik. He said, I don't know, Kelly. It doesn't seem like something I would do. I don't remember anything. And I was pretty much drunk all the time. So as part of as part of the development of the case, because it was death penalty eligible, our investigators and our paralegals did a lot of work to dig out his background, his mitigation, his medical records, his mental health records, his school records, all of it. And the investigator came into Kelly one day and said, oh my God, you've got to read these records right now. So it turned out that he passed out in a store. Paramedics were called. They knew him. They knew his date of birth. They dealt with him all the time. They picked him up, probably put one of those things on his finger to see if he had a pulse and what his blood pressure was, took him to VMC, and then they were called out to the scene in Monte Sereno where they, again, put the thing on the finger of the decedent to see if there had been a pulse. And that's how the DNA got transferred from Mr. Anderson, who I'll show you in a minute, to the decedent. And that's how, through really intense investigation, we were able to show that Mr. Anderson, seen here, out of custody now, had nothing to do with this murder. And so the case was presented to the prosecution. They understood that he had an airtight alibi, that there were medical records, and the timing wasn't right. He was clearly at VMC all night. But if he hadn't had a public defender, he would be in state prison right now, maybe looking at the death penalty. And that happens in other jurisdictions in the South all the time. And so that's the reason why you have to keep public defender offices strong and resourced comparatively to the prosecution. And it was a milestone case, and thank goodness Kelly was able to handle it the way she did. So I want to talk just briefly about public safety. Most people don't think of the public defender when they think of public safety, but I would invite you to think about us when you think about public safety, and here's why. Because we are uniquely situated in dealing with clients with acute needs as their lawyer and as part of their defense team to, as I mentioned, holistically address those needs, get them out of the system, get them the help they need, and thereby make the public safer. So please do think of us when you're thinking about public safety, and that again goes back to the resourcing. Just briefly before I hand over the mic to Damon, I just want to talk about some things we have on the horizon. Right now we can't do early representation with every single one of our clients. We would love to be able to do that. We probably need 5 more lawyers in order to do it, so that's a goal, to scale up our representation. We are starting a mental health court wellness pilot with Kelly Kulik, Lucas Anderson's lawyer, who's now on the bench and is a Superior Court judge. So she's doing that mental health court. We really need more resources to explore retroactive Racial Justice Act cases. And finally, Care Court, which is a state piece of legislation that is designed to get some mentally ill and homeless people off the street with some voluntary treatment. So we'll be involved in that at its rollout in December. And that's all I have for you, and I think maybe what I'll do is let Damon give his presentation, then we can both take some, and I would introduce him, but he said he wanted to introduce himself. So here he is, Damon Silver. Thank you.
Thanks for having us and welcoming us today. I'm going to get this mic in the right position. I just thought I'd take a quick minute introducing myself. I know I've had an opportunity to see so many of you, you know, in recent years and the welcoming environment. But just a little bit about my background and how I ended up in the public defender's office. I'm also, much like Molly, basically a product of the Bay Area. I grew up in Santa Rosa. I've lived my entire life in the Bay Area, but I was the son of 2 lifetime public servants. My mom was a teacher, an elementary school teacher for 25 years. My dad was a social worker for 35 years. And then I ended up attending UC Davis, both as an undergrad and then Martin Luther King Hall Law School. I started my public defender career up there in Yolo County, and then ultimately came down here in 1998. So I'm going on about 26, 27 years in this particular county. I actually met my wife in the office, and we raised 2 children in this community. So this is the only legal job I've ever had in my life as a public defender. It's the only job I ever wanted. It's a tough job, as you can imagine, and as kind of Molly laid out. But I will say it's the only job I've had in my life where I wake up on Monday and didn't count the days down to the end of the week. I usually start my Monday thinking, gosh, I'm not going to get done everything I want. And I actually always share that. We're sharing that today with a whole group of interns that were in our office. So I feel it's a great privilege to do this work. And I really want to acknowledge Molly, first of all, for inviting me and mentoring me and having me join our leadership team. I spent some time as our felony team supervisor, but in about 2017, I joined the administrative team for the office, and through Molly's really support, got to do some innovative projects. For instance, helping launch our first post-conviction team. So really looking at, again, in this holistic model and the history of the criminal legal system, what happened, especially during the 90s, during the mass incarceration movement, and what obligation do we as a community to redress what happened years ago? And that's really what our post-conviction team looks at. How can we return people safely to our community? The other thing is, as Molly mentioned, the community outreach position or attorney, I was able to help launch that. And frankly, I want to acknowledge Chris. Chris spent a lot of time mentoring me and sharing ideas and perspective on how the prosecution team worked and what felt like the right lane for our office to have outreach workers. And then in recent years, I've been fortunate and really, again, both through the support of Molly, but our county, of really looking at race equity work from a deeper perspective. And so I want to share a few observations and a little bit of history. I promise I won't be too long. I always come with more slides than I need, but I'm going to cut through them. But there is actually a reason why I have as much information on the slides, because, maybe I'll just start with this point, that we need to send an important message that race equity work is not a flavor of the month discussion. And what I really, when I come into community, I want to talk about what we're doing in our office to emphasize that, but I also want to be a spokesman for our county, that this is not a flavor of the month approach to this work. There is a lot of time that has been invested at the national level and that we have leveraged as a county to move this work forward. And so some of my slides are going to be too busy, but I use that to show that this has not been kind of half-baked ideas by a handful of people who, boy, because of the George Floyd tragedy, we're going to get into the room and we're going to get on media and talk about this. This is real work, and it's generational work, as I know the people in this room know better than I. In fact, frankly, I would be remiss not to start with really saying that I feel like I owe a great debt to the people in this room. If it weren't for people like Victor, Bob, Rose, Tony, Raul, Herman, if all of you weren't the leaders and the trailblazers all along, I wouldn't be standing here today giving a presentation like this. We wouldn't have an office resourced the way it was and look the way it was, and we wouldn't be working as a community to basically, or as a group to improve our community. And it's through support and partnership, but frankly, the struggle, the decades-long struggle that was pushed forward by the people in this room, in particular Victor, but so many of you, it really has allowed me to stand here today and share some of the work that what I'd call is kind of the fruit that has blossomed from a lot of your work. Okay, race equity work and some of the action plan and the organization in our particular office. What is race equity work? I know I'm preaching to the choir, and I know that many of you already know this, and I'm going to go kind of through this briefly. I'm just going to summarize this point, because I get sometimes these arguments about, is structural racism real? Is racism, are you really talking about that intentional person who has bigoted or discriminatory attitude towards another individual? And yes, that exists. But in some ways, from my perspective, that's not the core problem. The core problem is the structural element of racism. And where and why we know it is real is because every metric of success in our society, race is a predictor of outcome. So if you want to take a bell curve and think about whether it's wealth is a metric of success, health as a metric of success, involvement in the criminal and entanglement in the criminal legal system, I can tell you that if you look at race, where people will fall. That tells you there is structural racism at work and why we collectively as a community need to address it. And that's really kind of the point here. In particular, and why transition as it being uniquely important to organizations like the Public Defender's Office is because government, frankly, has been at the root of much of that. It's the policies and practices that government has pushed forward for 50, if not 100, 200, 300 years. And I'm going to have some concessions and confessions a little bit later. But we're at the root of it, and so we have to be at the front lines of solving it. And that's why, in particular, this work feels so important to me at this point in my career. These are some of the underlying concepts. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is oftentimes a slide I'm using, again, when I'm talking with people more new to the concepts or trying to introduce some of the concepts. What I do, obviously, I make this point that the plan is to develop an organized action plan. I do like to highlight the bullet point number 2, which is this inward-outward facing discussion, which is I like to use this lighthouse, glasshouse concept, which is when we're doing this work as an organization, as the Public Defender Office, I think of us as a lighthouse in terms of how we are serving the community and how a race equity lens should be used to help guide our decision making, how we serve our clients. That to me is the lighthouse component, but there's also a glasshouse component, which is we have to look internally at our own organization and how our own employees are thriving and how we foster a healthy environment for our own employees so that we can better serve the community. So it's both outward-facing and inward-facing work from my perspective. The other items I would just kind of highlight, and I oftentimes kind of close on this, but there's obviously no one-size-fits-all solution for any organization. There's no silver bullet solution, and it's not a purely linear process. And this is what I mean, as I got more deeply involved in the organized effort of this work, I can remember calling up my friend, Dr. Ana Lilia Garcia, who is now in charge of the Office of Diversity and Equity Belonging. She was still at Public Health at that time, and I said, listen, I really want to move beyond this academy work that I'd been involved in, and how do we move this work forward? And I started talking about, this is kind of a lawyer mindset, and this is part of my confession here today with Gabriella's invocation, I feel like, and as a former altar boy, I feel it's appropriate for me to do that. But I sat with Dr. Garcia, with Ana Lily, and I said, you know, I have this idea, and I'd really like to come up with a plan, and I've got this this vision of a phased approach, and I'd like to, you know, be here in 12 months, and here in 14 months, and here in 36 months. And she kind of looked at me and said, I want you to think more broadly. And really said, listen, this is a problem. If you step back for a second, this is a problem that is at least 400 years in the making. You are not going to solve this problem in 2, 3, or 4 years. In fact, it was moving my mindset from thinking of this as potentially a sprint with some, you know, some stops along the way, to potentially a marathon. This was going to be a long journey, and really accepting that this is going to be a relay race, that we are going to hand this work off generationally, and we are going to move this work forward generationally. So I think about this iterative process, which is because there's not a clear finish line, we're always using the same concepts. And I'll talk about a little bit about the GARE model, which is what the county's using, is what we are using, which is the Government Alliance on Race Equity, and their iterative process, their kind of core foundation of looking at normalizing conversations about race, organizing, developing infrastructure to do race equity work, and then operationalizing that. Those are the 3 core concepts. I have a slide in a minute about it, but it really is important for me to accept and for me to acknowledge we've got a lot of work, and frankly, the work isn't going to be done while I'm still in government, but I hope to move it substantially forward. What's the county plan? The county plan, in essence, again, was rooted in the idea that government's at the core of a lot of the inequities that exist in our society, so part of the solutions begin in government. Let me add as an aside, though, and one of the reasons why it's so important for me to be here and to do the work that Chris and Molly talked about in the community, government cannot solve these problems alone or without engagement with the community. It is a partnership that is going to be critical to this process. But the county has basically adopted the GARE philosophy. I would encourage anyone who's more curious, because today's not going to be the day for me to get into how the GARE philosophy necessarily works or all the details of it. It's a nationwide network of basically race equity practitioners who are supporting jurisdictions all across the country. Our county has become involved and is actively participating in this network. And it's due in no small part because the county executive first established the Division of Equity and Social Justice. So we're talking about the offices of Women's Policy, Immigrant Relations, the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, the Office of Cultural Competency, and then most recently, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging. That's the office that's run by Dr. Garcia, and she is the one who is going to lead our strategic work in this county, our race equity work. We're working on that this year, Chris. We spent a lot of hours over the last 6 months, and we've got a lot of hours ahead of us, but it's good work, and we are going to develop a strategic roadmap and a strategic plan over, basically, we're about 6 months in, about another 6 more months, we're going to have a plan that's going to be delivered to our County Board of Supervisors. And again, by the way, it is being done with community. It is not just government representatives in those meetings. Talk about GARE. This is one of those busy slides, basically to say, again, this is not some half-baked idea that Damon came up in the back room with some people in his office, but that we really are trying to operationalize a philosophy that is tested and proven successful. This is what I referred to as kind of the iterative process of normalizing conversations about race, operationalizing, and organizing. I just want to quickly make 2 points. People say normalize, what do you mean? And I say, well, go into any, I'll just use the courtroom example. Go into any courtroom and start talking about implicit bias and race. And the very first response you're going to hear, and Chris, I can see you shaking your head, is, are you calling me a racist? It's a very difficult conversation for people to have, and I can do this, or I can say this from my personal perspective, and my perspective as a person with white privilege. It's very difficult for white people to hear that, and that is not asking for an apology. That is the reality, and I look white people in the face all the time and say, it is real, and you need to open up your ears, you need to close your mouth, and you need to listen. because there's very different perspectives out there, and we all need to learn as a community, but in particular, you know, it probably needs to start with the white community. And so normalizing these conversations is critical. It's having these conversations and saying, I'm not going to get defensive. All of us operate with some level of implicit bias, and we need to explore our own implicit bias to move this work forward. The other thing I want to highlight is the operationalizing component, which is the application of race equity tools. So it's not just come up with, you know, I feel like maybe I'll do this. I'm going to start a diversity, equity, and belonging committee, and maybe we'll have some cultural celebrations in the office, something like that. Equity tools are used to help us apply an equity lens to decision making. And we went through an entire baseline assessment that was facilitated by the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging, where we had representatives from every unit in our office, not just the attorneys, not just the investigators, not just the paralegals. We had clerical staff. We had people from well, I shouldn't even say top to bottom. We had people from across our organization involved in that assessment. And then from that assessment, it gave concrete recommendations and strategies for us to begin operationalizing. I'm going to talk about those in just a minute as I get close to wrapping up. But I do want to talk briefly about the why. And this is the painful part. Okay, why is this important? I begin with this observation that I consider the Public Defender Office actually a race equity initiative itself, because we are in the middle of one of the major indicators of success, which is entanglement in the criminal legal system, and we operate right in the middle of that, trying to help clients ideally. But there's some statistics behind this that we all need to acknowledge. And before I get into these statistics, I want to make a real important point, which is this is not a finger-pointing exercise. Every government agency has played a role in why these statistics look like this. I'll share this point. Chris and Molly did some really incredible work on juvenile de-incarceration. As Chris said, we moved the juvenile hall from about 300 youth per day down to less than 100. Here's the other side of that that's still quite sad and discouraging in some ways. The disproportionality, the ratio of those kids in that hall are exactly the same, if not worse today. So you got 300 down to 100, but the percentages I'm about to show you are going to say we still have a lot of work to do, and all of us play a role. So this isn't pointing fingers at any particular agency. It's asking ourselves, why is this happening, and how do we attack this problem? Here are some of the stats. Usually I have this kind of all flow up here, but I'm just going to kind of briefly touch on this, which is statistically, the Public Defender Office represents 80 to 85% of all people facing criminal charges. They have to financially qualify for our services. So that means our criminal legal system is 80 to 85% poor people. That's the first observation. 76% of our clients, now these statistics change a little bit year by year, but they're basically always roughly in this area. 76% of all of our adult clients are Black, Indigenous, or people of color. Okay, I want to compare that to the county population. 12% of our clients are Black, while they are 3% or slightly 3% of our standing population. 55% of our clients are Latinx, while they're only about 35% of the population. 83% of our juvenile clients are BIPOC. 10% are Black, again, 3% of the population. 68% are Latinx, again, about 35% of the county population. Juvenile arrests and citations, about 68% Latinx and about 7% Black. Juvenile hall population, this is what I was referring to before, 77% Latinx, about 11% Black or African American. 77% of the people this county has sent to state prison, sitting in state prison right now, 77% of those people are BIPOC. About 55% Latinx, about 16% Black. So we got about 3,000 people up there in our state prisons, and 77% of them are BIPOC. 91% of our immigrant clients are BIPOC, about 24% are from our AAPI community. The last stat I put up there is a little bit of that inward-facing conversation, which is in 2022, the state bar admittees, new lawyers, only 6% were Latinx. 35% of our state population. We have, and I know Chris has spent a lot of time, and we talk a lot about this, about how do we build a better pipeline both into the legal profession and into our offices. I think there's been some great progress, but at the statewide level, we have a lot of work to do. Okay, I'm getting close to kind of wrapping up. This is really my last meaningful slide, which is, well, what the heck is the Public Defender Office doing? You've told us about this problem, you've told us about some sort of commitment, but do you really actually have a plan? And so this is what our plan has been over the last couple years, and in particular a phased plan. Beginning in 2021, we really leaned into the normalization process, which is educational phase and building the plan, building what this phase process was going to look like. We spent some time doing structural racism 101. You know, everyone starts at a different place and how much they know about this, and honestly, their resistance to accept that this is real. We did critical race theory training. We did de-biasing training for ourselves as well. And the good news is the State Bar requires us to do de-biasing training at least once every 2 years. I don't think that's enough, but it is progress, at least at the State Bar level. Phase 2 began in 2022. We began to expand this training series, and I'd like to highlight this point. This is one of the things that I'm proud of, is we began by training all of our formal leadership before we asked any other line staff to participate. We needed to send a message to our line staff that you aren't going to have to do anything we haven't already done and gone through ourselves. And so leadership, I think, begins really with the leaders, right? So that was part of our training plan. We began some of our initiatives. There's reference to, we ended up seeking and obtaining through the Board of Supervisors support a dedicated Racial Justice Act attorney to help us litigate these issues. We did start our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee, and in part that was out of that baseline assessment and recommendation. And then we moved into phase 3 in 2023 and 2024, where we again began applying the equity tools. We completed the baseline assessment. There was a county-wide employee equity survey to evaluate employees' knowledge and readiness to get involved in this work. And we established our own Office GARE Equity Race Equity Steering Committee to lead the work, because when we got done with the baseline assessment, there were a handful of very clear themes. One, our office needed more training, and so we've invested in a lot of training and organizing training and advertising training. I'm proud to say that in about the last 6 to 9 months, we have some training related to race and race equity work almost every other week. Okay, that's not all just internal training, it's how we network throughout the state, but that is major progress in my mind in terms of getting our collective baseline educational level up. We began thinking about communication and transparency. We realized that people actually didn't know a lot of the good work we've been doing, and we're trying to do better in communicating that both out into the community, internally in our office. So we've talked about overhauling our website, beginning with newsletters about the important work we do, and continuing to think about how we can better communicate with both the community and our office. Last 2 things, we've dipped into a data project, and boy, did I have no idea the can of worms I was opening up trying to think about collection and managing data on race equity. And here it is in a nutshell, is race is real, but race is not biologically associated. Okay, so race changes as a social construct over time, and the best example of that is go look at the census each 10 years. We're all categorized differently and it evolves. What that means is all our data systems have been built at different times, they're at a different age, they use different nomenclature, so we can't collectively as a county talk about our same clients in the same way. We're working towards a county-wide standard. I'm hoping to get involved and support that. We are doing that internally in our office, and we're trying to do it in a culturally competent way. In particular, relying on self-report rather than what kind of flows upstream for all of us. Someone puts it in the data system 10 years ago, and that becomes your identity. We don't want to do that anymore. So this is part of our kind of data collection process. And then just building the infrastructure, right? Sustainability. This is my part about this is not a flavor of the month. If we build a sustainable infrastructure, it doesn't matter if Molly's the public defender anymore. It doesn't matter if I'm sitting in my seat anymore. The goal is so that when we aren't in leadership of the office, this work continues. And so we're really trying to have a mind and an eye towards sustainability. So that's really what I wanted to share. Usually my last slide, but I kind of stole my own wrap-up, is the sprint versus marathon versus relay race. I really appreciate you all welcoming and your patience on a Friday night with me. Thanks so much.
Thank you to our guests for coming in. We do have a couple minutes for a question or two if someone had one. Yes. Hang on, we got a mic coming.
Okay, you hit on a lot of good points. And teaching a juvenile hall in the early 80s, you know, I agree with a lot of the stuff you're saying. What I do not see, though, when you talk about cultural competency, you know, you want to really make changes in the amounts of children in custody for life, you need to start improving the neighborhoods. Now, that's not your job. That's the city's job. It's not the cop's job, right? That's social services' job. And without, and I've said that many times before, without that, you're spinning your wheels. We need the city to partner with you. And that means code enforcement and parks. And that money needs to be genuine, honest, and a lot. We need park rangers. Because without that, look at Plata Royal Park and the crime that's going on there now. It's not the kids in the skate park, it's the adults hanging out there. And they're turning those kids. So what I would like you to consider, and hopefully you agree with me, that San Jose still has a small town feeling. You know, I mean, we still own an orchard in Gilroy. We have apricots in Gilroy. So we need to get rid of the gang dependence, and that will, in turn, improve the quality of life for our community. Thank you.
Yes, Gabrielle. Wait for the mic. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for two riveting presentations. It's amazing how the office has evolved. Now, what I noticed is that you have a mental health team, and what I see is substance use issues. And I'm wondering, how is that addressed? I was not in favor of mental health and substance use being merged into behavioral health, because there's a lot more mandatory funding for mental health. And when there's an economic crisis, look what happens. No one's talking about substance use issues. And we see it everywhere, and not in the infrastructures. So could you address that?
Thanks, Gabrielle. That's a great question. And I will say we gave a presentation at a joint public safety meeting for the city of San Jose and the county recently. And one thing that was really striking is that for us, our clients who have 15, 20, 30 cases, and I know the chief will agree with me about this, those clients are predominantly unhoused, with addiction issues, with mental health issues, and not really getting much help. So this may seem like I'm not answering your question, but I will say, because there's so much overlap and co-occurring disorders for folks who have mental health issues, sometimes they're self-medicating, the symptoms start to merge and overlap, and so you're right, you don't want them to be merged, and really if you already have mental health issues, you don't want to see a lot of drug use, but that is in fact what happens. So if you can try to meet the whole person and both figure out what the diagnosis is and also figure out what it's going to take to try to get the addiction addressed, then you can start to unweave it and unwrap it. So, Damon, you may have something else to add, but
Oh, I'm going to go with the elected official.
Well, yeah, I'm going to take my point of privilege here. First of all, thank you, Molly and Damon, for being here. With the enormous amount of cases that you have with only a small amount of staff, you guys are doing incredible work. But even though with all the changes that we have here, many studies have shown that people of colors have been more convicted and given more higher sentences in the criminal justice. What is the DA office is doing to minimize that? All right, sorry, Chris, I forgot to include you.
Or DA?
DA, yes.
Well, we've met with you about looking at racial justice issues. We've been on all the committees with the Public Defender's Office, and I think most importantly, as the DA's office, we have put people into the community to prevent crime. You've worked with some of our community prosecutors, Byron Suarez, etc. But I think most importantly, what we did is hold ourselves accountable. For the last almost decade, we have published an annual race and prosecution publication, which I know not many people read, but it's important because year over year, we look at the race of every defendant by crime, and we have noticed a lot of different things that have come up that haven't always been popular, but Jeff Rosen has done through his Bend the Arc initiative and several others. They include, first and second offense misdemeanor drug possessions. We won't prosecute. You have to get 3 within a year to get those cases prosecuted. That led to a lot of frustration from people. But when we took a look at recidivism rates, those people weren't coming back, yet had a crime on their rap sheet when they tried to get a job. So what we found was that I think it's up to about 15,000 people, mostly young men of color, who have not had a crime on their rap sheet. So those are the kinds of things you can take a look at and see where you just have such a high level of young men of color in one category of crime. We can say to ourselves, well, what can we do about that? And that you have to work with your partners on that, and it's hard, but those are the kind of good decisions I think that you can do, helping the community and not directly impacting public safety in a negative way either. So that's been one example to give you.
Thank you, Chris. And how many cases per year does prosecution prosecute?
We currently file about 35,000 cases, a review, I should say, about 35,000 cases a year. Before COVID, it was about 42,000, so it is down significantly. But we have recently done studies on our prosecution rates, which you can will be able to find on our website very soon. And we only file on about 75% of the cases presented to us by the police. The national average is closer to 90% because we hold, to a certain level of, can we really not only can we prosecute this case, but should we prosecute this case? And so I think there are a lot of changes coming up with race-blind charging decisions, which I think, my personal opinion is it can be, I don't think it's going to be good because I think you need people to, the more you know about something, you make a better decision. But we'll see I wish Ash Collar was here. I would tell him it's my personal opinion, of course. But we'll see what happens with that. I think it's going to be very, very bad. So it's something you can look forward to fixing when you run for whatever it is next, because it's going to be a mess.
Thank you for your confidence
but
there.
I'm retiring in December. So
you can't do that. We're not allowing you to. No, here's a last question here that I know a lot of young people, we all make mistakes. And I think it's important that the public defender work with the prosecution to understand the cases where we can push the young adult into a program versus incarceration. And do you guys, I would imagine you guys talk quite often in many cases.
I spend way too much time with Damon, yeah. I think we've been together at least 3 evenings this week, so something like that. But yes, so I'm gonna halt the questions there, Steve, unless you're dying to ask your question. Well, it's someone behind. We got a question behind you too.
Then I will ask a
Okay,
simple
go ahead.
question. My question is simply, what is your office's relationship to the Innocence Project? And it seems to me they take on a lot of important work, but maybe not as many, and they're also high profile. So.
Thank you for that question, Steve. We have a relationship with the Innocence Project because of the nature of the work they do and the nature of the work we do. It's more informal than formal. We have a lot of students, Santa Clara students, who interned in the Innocence Project, became very interested in public defender work, and come to us. So as I said, it's a little more informal, but we send a lot of lawyers over to Santa Clara to lecture in law school classrooms, and we have many, many interns also come from Santa Clara to work for us, who also, as I mentioned, worked for the Innocence Project. Did I answer your question? Damon, do you have anything else?
I think this was probably implicit in Molly's answer, but the Innocence Project is appellate work, really. And so that is a different area of law practice than we do. So we coordinate, we work together. Certainly we cooperate if it's a former client of ours in some fashion, but it's slightly different litigation. In fact, it's not uncommon for retirees from our office to join and be a part of the Innocence Project. I think we've had at least 2 former public defenders in their retirement get involved. Obviously, it's incredibly important work, so.
One more question, or 2 more questions.
Oh. Hi, Carla Torres with Raza Roundtable, but also employee group El Comité. And I've seen you all at the racial equity work that we've been doing countywide. So, it's a lot of work, and it is a marathon. And I appreciate what you're doing and sharing the statistics. Unfortunately, that's in all of our systems, right? Even though you decrease the numbers, the disproportionate is still the same, right? Black and brown, it's us. So wondering about how we work in these silos, and going to the gentleman's question too about what about City of San Jose? What about with the county? How do we work together? Are we working together? Because I don't see it, right? What about, and not to call anybody out, right? We're all, like you said, this is what we're doing. So let's call it out and let's do better. The sprint could be, let's connect with City of San Jose, right? Let's talk about how we're working together. And then the question would be, in terms of the judges, are they going through these trainings? Are all the attorneys going through the trainings? Your offices, you are, but I am. But what about the others who have power and position? And then finally, county council, are they going through the training?
As a lawyer, as much as I like to speak for other people, this is probably one I can't completely speak to. I think you raise incredibly important points, which is everybody needs to do this training. I certainly cannot speak for the court, although they recently joined us at a Racial Justice Act symposium at Santa Clara University. We had 4 of the judges on the panel. They discussed some of the training they're doing. We are actively litigating these cases. I mean, we had one in almost an all-day hearing today, and I thought a very thoughtful ruling by the court in part of the hearing. So it gives me hope that we're moving in the right direction. I'm going to continue to concede. I'll let other agencies speak for themselves. I do know the district attorney's office is doing it. I don't know about the county council, but I do feel like I don't remember exactly how that cliche is about a rising tide raises all boats. I think the more we normalize this as an expectation of everybody in the county, in the city, I think, we raise the tide of expectation for everyone. That's, I think, one of the steps. I will lastly say there is actually coordination. We've joined what was formerly the Mayor's Gang Task Force, which has been rebranded the Mayor's Youth Empowerment Alliance. So we are, there is a kind of cross-connection and cross-pollination and attempts at coordination. But again, I'm going to admit, we got a long way to go.
Yeah, I totally agree with Damon that we have systems like we have county committees, the city's invited to, the public defender, probation, and my office go to the mayor's gang prevention task force meetings, and we're able to share a lot of information. So I think we all know each other. I think sometimes the way the systems are built, you have to work harder to make those connections because they're not a given. So that's tough. Did you?
Question's probably better directed at Damien. He posted a lot of statistics in terms of the client population served by the public defender's office. How do you staff your office to deal with cultural competency, to deal with the monolingual individuals that come to your attention? What are the numbers, and how do you gear up for that? And one question, one request, not a question. Can I get a copy of your slides? They're excellent. Sure.
So I take your question to mean how are we dealing with language proficiency issues in our client base and with our staff? And okay. Yeah, so two things. We hire a lot, and we always are looking for fluent in Spanish, fluent in Vietnamese, lawyers, paralegals, clerical. So we have, that's top of mind always when we do hiring. And we have many members of our staff speak Spanish and speak Vietnamese. So we're always trying to have our office reflect the community that we serve, and so it's very important to us. I think, where we have people who speak some Spanish, we always have interpreters brought in. We have a number of we have interpreters in court. We take interpreters into the jail so that we don't miss any legal nuances that you were talking about. So, Damon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would agree to that. Beyond the language question, I love the question about cultural competency. And it's actually a very ripe question that we're wrestling with right now. We've been thinking, or we have been expanding our DEIB, our Diversity, Equity, and Belonging Committee, to make sure that we're including all staff now, and actually creating space for that staff. And one of the first questions by our investigators is, there are cultural communities I'm not familiar with, and what kind of training can we do? So we're already thinking, frankly, we should have been thinking, and there are trainings, very, I think, broad, generic trainings, but really trying to dig in and understand the community much better. In terms of language, I will say this, which is when we're doing anything very technical, the good news is we require using court-certified interpreters. But, and I can't speak to this from personal experience, but I have had this feedback so many times in my life in talking to clients. The value of a client to be able to speak to someone in their native language, even if they're not exactly proficient on all the legal terms, just the ability to connect to your attorney when they speak your native language is incredibly powerful, incredibly meaningful, and helps us build credibility and build trust with our clients. And that's why we spend so much time trying to find those attorneys.
Don't talk to them after.
We always run into work later.
They'll be available after the show. Okay? I let you go over already. All right. Here we go. Councilman, are you good? Do you want to get an announcement? Okay, you sure? I stopped him for you. Okay, Councilman, thank you for coming. Councilman Duan, thank you. Thanks to our chief and our new independent police auditor, and most importantly to our guests from the Public Defender's Office, and all of you for being here. There's pizza and soda and beer, so go ahead and eat some food. Take care.